Moving on to Rhamondre Stevenson of the New England Patriots. Andrew lays out that he experienced a very successful rookie season that should not be overlooked. After fully escaping the Belichick doghouse in Week 9, Stevenson earned top grades across the board. He was PFF's third highest graded running back at 84.2. Additionally, he ranked 13th in rushing yards and yards per route run at 1.41. For fantasy, the rookie running back was the RB25 in total points scored, 8 spots behind his backfield teammate Damian Harris. Stevenson and Harris split touches nearly 50-50 in the team's remaining games. In the 6 games together, Stevenson slightly edged out Harris in expected fantasy points per game, 9.3 versus 8.9. There's a high ceiling for Stevenson, says Andrew. If you ask former Patriots linebacker Rob Ninkovich, the ESPN analyst said that Stevenson, quote, will be one of the better, if not one of the top 3 running backs in the league, based on what I saw with his strength, explosion, and catch and run ability. So Andrew says, with the rumors coming out of Foxborough that Stevenson is a dark horse to see an expanded role on third downs, with James White returning from the injury, the second-year back needs to be a priority target as the draft slips into the double-digit round.
So I love this breakdown. I like Rhamondre a lot myself. The problem when I have a rule, you talk about, you write down your mantras. I have a notebook I keep notes in as well. And in that section of notes, probably from 3 or 4 years ago, it was just don't draft a New England running back. Well, spoiler alert, I draft New England running backs every year because I'm always like, it will work out. These guys are good. It's going to be a run-heavy team. And we like to talk about the unpredictable Bellatrix in this industry. And Travis and I talk about how Bellatrix are actually fairly predictable. There's going to be a lot of stable backs, all with their semi-unique roles, who are going to get more utilization depending on the matchup. And based on the matchups, you kind of do have a decent idea of which back will be utilized the most in that game. Now, it's fine for week to weeks, but it makes the overall predictions from where I'm looking at it a little bit tough. So do you agree with this overall overview of the Bellatrix? And if so, how should we approach this New England backfield, knowing that Rhamondre, but as well as some others, are legit good running backs who are all going to get time?
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. Talking about how Belichick plays the matchups with certain players, you can see it by the way that they have guys active on game day. Depending on, all right, we're going to have a run heavy approach, like we're going to have Stevenson active. They did it last year. Like cycling through Stevenson, and he was inactive. Then they had JJ Taylor. He would be active for certain games, but then ultimately, whatever happens, if someone puts the ball on the ground, like you're going to be inactive the next week. So the fumbles usually kind of solve everything because they just basically are the chopping block of running backs in the backfield. It's like, right, well, you fumbled, you're gone. Welcome to the doghouse. So Rhamondre was in the doghouse during the beginning of last year, and he was able to get out of it. Like, that in itself was an accomplishment, especially for a rookie running back, which the Patriots hardly ever feature. When you look back at historically with Belichick, it's really only been the first round picks that basically have to play because of where they're drafted, like Lawrence Maroney and Sony Michel. Like, Rhamondre Stevenson was a day 3 pick, and he managed to not only get on the field, but carve out a near 50-50 role in the second half of the season. So, the Rob Ninkovich quote really stuck out to me because he wasn't even talking about like best running back on the Patriots, like best running back in the league. And when you look at his, the second half of last season, it's hard to argue with, like, Stevenson was one of the best running backs in the league at the end of last season. Like, from a receiving standpoint, from a rushing standpoint, he was off the charts. And I think that I almost just prefer drafting Stevenson instead of Harris, because if I draft Harris, in my mind, I'm going to view him as a starter. And I'm like, all right, I need to start this guy every week. Whereas Rhamondre, I'm drafting as a depth piece, and then I'm just waiting for him to, assert himself to become the number 1 runner in this backfield. Or if a Damian Harris injury happens, because if that does occur, Damian Harris has been banged up. Rhamondre has a 3-down skill set, which we just haven't seen from Damian Harris. We haven't seen Damian Harris get involved more in the receiving game, where Stevenson did it as a rookie, which is just really rare to find. So I think that Stevenson, and I was originally on Damian Harris earlier in the offseason, so I've kind of shifted gears a little bit. Stevenson is honestly just like a really cheap version of A.J. Dillon. Like, it would not surprise me whatsoever to be talking about A.J. Dillon or talking about Stevenson next year And we're talking about a guy that, if Damien Harris, comes back to the Patriots, we're talking about Damien Harris is like a 6th-round pick and Rhamondre is a 7th-round pick, like right behind him if he's not already the lead bell cow for the Patriots. So I think that the fact that they drafted other running backs doesn't really move the needle for me. I don't think those guys are going to be involved. Like Rhamondre being involved as a rookie was such a rare feat. Like Kevin Harris, Pierre Strong, I think I like their profiles. I was glad the Patriots drafted them as like a fan, but I don't expect anything from them in year one. I really think it's going to be Damien Harris and Stevenson. And like you had alluded to, Stevenson might just be the better running back.
Well, and like you mentioned it there with Harris and like their ability to kind of almost force. I mean, Rhamondre had missed blocks and fumbled. Like that's usually like you'll get cut for that stuff. Yeah, like with Belichick. But you said it, like they kind of forced played him there. So I can hear these Damien Harris stands right now being like, hey, he's in contract year. He was good last year. A lot of it was touchdown dependent. But do you see New England just pounding him into the ground, or do you actually think that Stevenson could possibly be that much better that they're just going to have to throw him on the field?
It could definitely work in both ways where, maybe they pound Damien Harris to start the year and maybe Stevenson is really not involved at all. And then what do? Oh, you see him hit the waiver wire and then you stash him. Like that's the play there. And, don't forget that last year, Sony Michel was in a contract year. What happened to him? Oh, he got traded to a team that lost their running back. You don't think that Damien Harris could be a potential trade candidate that the Patriots, hey, we have so many running backs now. Like, let's trade Damien Harris. Oh, Josh Jacobs is going to hold out. Oh, Josh McDaniels, you want Damien Harris? Oh, you can take him. Give us a 3rd-round pick. Like, there are so many scenarios where Damien Harris gets moved. They use him up, in the beginning of the season. And then when it really matters, they turn the ball to Rhamondre Stevenson. Because Harris has always operated as a committee back. Like, he's never been the featured guy, where Stevenson showed us last year that he could really take on that role. So, yeah, right now for me, like based on just ADPs that I've seen, Harris is going usually just way too far where, week 1, we could see a 50-50 split and we could see Stevenson play more on 3rd downs. And it's like, okay, so what am I getting out of Damien Harris? Like, you need touchdowns from Harris, and that's what we got last year. And it's just hard to bank on them happening year over year, especially with Stevenson, he's going to get touches in this offense.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing will be to watch James White's health. So like if we get through the summer and James White it's still murky, then I'll start to believe some of these things of Rhamondre picking up the receiving. Like I know he can catch, but it's just about like if James White's healthy, they're going to give James White the James White role for sure. But like we have questions about that.
Right here.
Hey, you like mock drafting? So do we. Check out one of our previous mocks in the videos here and like and subscribe to catch next week's mock draft coming your way.